was, and stuck up for me, and they just turned away and walked back into like the little office that were downstairs. So I walked up into my bedroom.
Just pausing there, I think you say at this point, when you came back to the care home, your clothes were covered in vomit and you were really spaced out.
Yeah, and like all my hair was wet from washing it out of the bath, but there was still like chunks of vomit in my hair and stuff.
And I think you described how you were very distressed and upset by this event, and you spent several days in your room.
It wasn't necessarily being distressed. My whole body hurt. Like I was tired, and all of my body hurt and ached, and I just felt really sleepy, and it was just like I couldn't get up and do anything. I felt poorly. I felt genuinely really poorly, and I didn't get out of bed for a couple of days. Didn't even wash the vomit out of my hair or off my clothes. I just literally laid in bed covered in vomit for days.
And you think this was the effects of the drug, do you? Or you on you still?
The drug and the fit, I think, a mixture of them both.
But I think you say that you didn't get any medical help from the staff, and that when you did come back down after 3 days, they said something to the effect of you finally decided to get out of bed and grace us with your presence. Is that right?
Yes, and
the reason I'm recording this spontaneously, and I'm quite a way into it, it's the UK independent inquiry into child sexual abuse and talking about child sexual exploitation. Basically gangs, predominantly Pakistani, that's just the facts, in the UK, grooming children and taking them out of children's homes at 13 and 14 and putting them into forced prostitution. They're not child prostitutes because you're a child, but they were pimping them out. And this is a young girl describing the effects of having had her drink spiked, drugging for rape. It goes back decades. And my older sister, who's currently 65, was made a ward of the court, part of an MK Ultra project, I believe, through a Jesuit-run convent in Bath. She was made a ward of court at 14, and at 15 she was allowed to go out on dates with a 35-year-old man who she ended up having a child with and being released from care at 18 too. But at 15 she was allowed to go out with a man 20 years older. And the reason I'm sharing this is because, first of all, when Iicsa was started, and it started with so many false starts, people had to resign because they were insiders, and I got emails of other people's testimonies, and presumably other people got mine, and they said it was a clerical error. Then the website went down for 14 days. They said they lost all those disclosures. They tried to get Fiona Woolf as the judge or presiding chair over the inquiry, who used to go to dinner with Leon Britton and his wife, who was named by many survivors. But these hearings used to supposedly live stream, but they said there was like a 5-minute delay in case somebody inadvertently spoke something they shouldn't and they could edit it out. Well, it's gone from that to being streamed a week later with a heavy selection of who's allowed to participate and heavy redaction of statements submitted. And I just went to like this video because it's a brave girl that was sharing her testimony anonymously, but just very brave. I went to share it and it said this video does not exist. So I think I'm able to keep playing it because I've started, but it may be when I click out of it, it's gone. And it's only been up about half an hour. And then they've maybe fulfilled their duty to broadcast it.
To arrest me for criminal damage because I'd smashed a mirror in my room about a week before. And the police officer opened the bedroom door. And I remember it was a female officer. And she took one look at me and she said, "I'm not arresting her in that condition. You need to make sure she's all right and get her some medical help." And then the police officer left, but still no one ever got me any medical help.
And were there other occasions where you were threatened with being placed in a secure unit, not for your own safety in relation to the abuse, but because of your behaviour, in inverted commas?
Yes, they said that if I carried on acting the way that I was acting, they'd have to put me in a secure unit and that I wouldn't be allowed out of the building. I'd have to be kept in all the time, and that would sort my behaviour out.
And you raise a series of questions about why it was the staff didn't spot these various signs of trauma in you, why you were allowed to go out with these men, and why, when you'd been reported missing, the police didn't assist any more robustly than they did. So you've expressed the view, I think, that there were plenty of missed opportunities to investigate criminal offences against you and overall take better care of you. Is that a fair summary?
Yes. There were plenty of opportunities where they could have intervened and actually done something before it had got too bad. Like, when we first started going out, we'd not been actually being abused by that point. Yeah, we'd been bought stuff, but no one had actually done anything to start off because they lulled us into a false sense of security. And if they'd have intervened at that point, either me or victim two would have had the mental traumas that we have from what happened through the years after that. They could have stopped it before anything bad even happened to us. They could have done something before it got too bad. By the time I left that care home, I was getting abused left, right and centre. I didn't really even know what a normal life was.
You say in your witness statement, paragraph 15, that without going into too much detail about what you suffered, that you were a victim of grooming, violence, drug and alcohol exposure and sexual abuse. And then, because you have, what you describe in your witness statement, developed a warped perspective on sexual behaviour, did you start a relationship of a sexual nature with another person who lived at the care home?
Yeah, we both kind of went to each other for comfort. Like, we both needed that comfort in us.
I better comment on this because, God forbid, Iicsa, even if it has, now I might be wrong, I took a screenshot where it says this video no longer exists when I went to press like. So if that's just a glitch in the matrix, I'll apologise. But technically, Iicsa could put a copyright strike on me for if I don't comment on it and interrupt it and so on. So I'll put a fair use disclaimer in the description. And as a 63-year-old who's made mistakes, and I do have 3 children to 2 fathers, so I'm not coming from a haughty, judgmental place, but absolutely the perpetrators are to blame, the people running care homes for profit are to blame, the police and social workers who wouldn't listen are to blame. But also, if we want to look at this societally, and I would never blame the children, never, but societally, we can't expect a civilization to flourish if girls are getting pregnant at 14, which this victim's mother did, and then girls are staying in relationships with domestic violence and continually fail to go through with prosecutions and reporting. If girls are fleeing from one, which her mother did, fleeing from one violent relationship to a hostel and then starting a new relationship in the hostel with somebody who then goes on to be violent to her, by then 2 children from 2 different fathers in toxic relationships. And it's like, it's the back to basics things. We need to raise, particularly our girls, but our boys too. Don't go around creating life carelessly outside of marriage because it feels good, or you were drugged, or you were drunk, or everybody else was doing it, or abortion was so easily come by. You know, because it's bringing down consequences for generations. There are so many stories of survivors who survived horrendous children's home experiences, absolutely horrendous, survived abuse, observed murders, survived beatings, survived rape, survived so much, but were ill-equipped to have any self-esteem and make a healthy, committed relationship in order to have children themselves. And then their children are taken into care and the whole thing starts all over again. It's just absolutely just tragic, tragic.
Life, and because I didn't really understand how you're supposed to act sexually, that comfort turned into a sexual relationship.
Of course it did, yeah.
And did you end up becoming pregnant?
Yes, I was 15 and he was 17, and I conceived my child inside the care home.
Were staff aware that you two were having a sexual relationship in the home?
Yes, they spoke to my mum on multiple occasions about it.
Were you also, around this time, when you were 15, regularly going out to nightclubs in the area and having a fake ID that doormen were offering to get you fake IDs and things like that?
Well, yeah, since I was 14, I'd been going clubbing. My mum had called out one of the clubs on Facebook one time saying, "You're letting my underage daughter in, blah, 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 blah." And then next time I went, the person on the door said, "Oh, your mum's been causing a scene. If you're going to come back and bring £30 with you and I'll get you a fake ID." This man has since been convicted of child sex crimes unrelated to my case.
Was there also a situation whereby a doorman on one of these clubs, or perhaps more than one occasion, gave you ecstasy pills?
Yeah, this is the same doorman that got done in a different case. He would sell me ecstasy pills for £10, but quite a lot of them. And then he'd also would just be dancing on the dance floor and he'd walk past and just pop a pill into his mouth as they were walking past and stuff. He fed us with ecstasy quite a lot.
And you say you spent most Fridays and Saturdays in that club, is that right?
Sometimes even Sundays and Thursdays.
You say that you were a young-looking 15 or 16-year-old, but never once did the police inquire about your age, even though there were police officers outside the club, is that right?
Yeah, there were police officers there a lot because there was a lot of violence there, like there were shootings there and stuff like that. So the police had to keep quite a heavy eye on the night police because of stabbings and shootings and stuff along them lines.
You say you were a young-looking 15 or 16-year-old and you used to tell people that you'd been going to clubs regularly, but you were never once asked for ID until your 18th birthday.
Yeah.
Sorry, is that right?
Yeah, literally on my 18th birthday we went out and I got asked for ID.
And you raise a series of questions about why the staff at the home didn't monitor the hallways in the evening to see who was home, why there wasn't more investigation of concerns about you being in these nightclubs underage, why the same nightclubs were allowed to open when it was common knowledge that they were letting in underage girls, and why the doormen were able to sell you drugs and things like that. Is that right?
Yeah, well, the staff was meant that they...
And again, her mother had her at 14, she got pregnant at 15. Nobody had ever told her what sex meant and the difference between needing intimacy and being sexually exploited. And the thing about clubbing, I know that I started going to technically a disco, but it was technically a nightclub 18 plus in Bradford-on-Avon in Wiltshire in the rowing club. And I started being allowed out once a week at age 16. But I had to be home by 10 o'clock and it didn't finish till 11. So my father thought that by getting me home early, I would miss all the misbehaviour. And eventually for about 6 months, I used to come in at 10 to 10 to get in his good books and stuff in my bed and then sneak out again and then come in secretly at 11 or 11:30. But troubled teen as well, being abused regularly. But, you know, some of it's just normal teenage behaviour, because I remember booking an 18th birthday party, other than the one my family booked at Caldicott Castle, which turned into a staff outing and all sorts. But But I personally booked an 18th little disco with my friends, and I stupidly said it to the owners of the disco nightclub thing. Oh, it's my 18th. I want to do blah, blah. And they're like, you cheeky little bugger, you've been coming here for 2 years. You know, we've been serving you drink for 2 years. And now you tell us it's your 18th. But that was in the 70s. That was regarded as funny, you know. But I do think the point, I would happily go into schools and talk to young teens about the price of casual sex, the human price and the devastation it causes to generations, you know? And that's why we've got millions of abortions as well.
Right, they're meant to stay upstairs and monitor the hallway, but they would probably sit there for about 15 minutes, maybe 20, and then they'd go downstairs and they won't come back up.
And so is that how you and other girls in the home were able to leave?
Well, the doors were on magnets, so we could never leave the care home without them knowing that we'd left the care home, but we could go into each other's rooms because they'd been downstairs. There's meant to be a rule where you're not allowed to each other's room with the door closed, but they never monitored that. We'd just go into each other's rooms and have the door closed, and we wouldn't have no idea what were going on. Bearing in mind, this care home is for between 12-year-olds and 18-year-olds of both sexes, so they were supposed to keep an eye on it because of the fact it's a mixed sex and it is at the age where stuff like that happens.
But when you were leaving the nightclub to go, leaving the home to go to nightclubs and things like that, is it your understanding that the staff would know that you'd gone out?
Yes, they would know because the doors from 10 o'clock, the doors were on magnets. So what we do is we go out and say to them that we wanted to go outside for a last cig, but we'd be all dressed up with makeup on and dresses on and stuff like that. And they'd open the doors and let us go for a cig, knowing that we wouldn't come back in.
Were there various occasions when you yourself were arrested on charges of criminal damage and assault and things of that nature?
Yeah, I think I've got
at least, you don't need to tell us all the details, I don't think, but is it right that you were prosecuted several times for criminal damage and assault on both staff at the care home or the police?
Yeah, at least 12 times.